We live in a world that ranks literally everything: homes, jobs, followers, subscriptions, even churches. Some people build their identity on their resume, but James grabs the mic and says, "Hey, you broke guy." He's the one who should really be celebrating. For the rich guy, time to kind of lower yourself a little bit. It's the great reversal because God isn't impressed with you. But if you got nothing, you might just be closer to glory than you think. Got it.
Yes, we're talking about James in chapter
One,
James,
James 1, 9 through 11,
James 1, 9
specifically.
through 11. So let's just start by reading that so we can get context as to what you were talking about when we started this thing.
Yeah, because it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense without context, right?
So James, we're in James for the simple reason that James steps on our toes and we go, ouch, and then he keeps stepping on them. But he wants us to get things right, and we appreciate that. So James 1, 9 to 11 says this, but the brother of humble circumstances is to glory in his high position. But the rich man is to glory in his humiliation, because like flowering grass, he will pass away. For the sun rises with the scorching wind and withers the grass, and and its flower falls off, and beauty... Number 11 again. For the sun rises with a scorching wind and withers the grass, and take 3. I'll just start it over again. James 1, 9 to 11. But the brother of humble circumstances is to glory in his high position, and the rich man is to glory in his humiliation, because like flowering grass, he will pass away. For the sun rises with a scorching wind and withers the grass, and its flower falls off, and the beauty of its appearance is destroyed. So too the rich man in the midst of his pursuits will fade away. Now,
That's tough stuff right there.
Now, please understand that I am not a theologian and I can't speak for Jamie, but we are just two people, I believe, that are just studying the Word of God and trying to understand it so we can get a little closer to God. And in the process, hopefully bring you a little closer to God as well. So absolutely, status matters to people, but not...
It's interesting that status matters, but it doesn't necessarily impress God.
Yeah. So absolutely status matters, but it doesn't, God's not impressed. God's not impressed. Yeah.
So the problem is that we try to build our identity on all kinds of things, right? How many friends we have, the size of our house, the kinds of car we drive, the size of our bank account, the title that we have at work, the position we hold. I mean, that's kind of how we try to build our identity.
Yeah, and it's a trap. It really is. I become less and less impressed with any celebrity nowadays. The only thing that impresses me from a celebrity standpoint is when they are really human and that they really are trying to do something right with regard to leading people to Christ.
Yeah. So, well, and I kind of struggled with this verse a little bit. Not necessarily the whole idea of um, God, utilizes and God, kind of lifts up anybody of low circumstance. I mean, he's done that throughout the entire Bible, right? I mean, you look at David. So David was the youngest of the family. He was a shepherd, pretty much had no status, but yet, God calls him to be the king. And then you look at the disciples themselves. I mean, none of them were necessarily what we would call um, uh, royalty or anybody of high status.
Right.
Like nobody took notice of the disciples.
So who of the disciples had the highest social status, as it were?
Probably Matthew.
Tax collector,
probably not
the greatest, not necessarily a positive thing in those days. What was it? The tax collector?
I mean, he was probably held in regard by the Romans, but certainly not by the Jews.
Oh yeah. Well, he brought in the money for the Romans.
Right. So he was probably held in some regard to the Romans.
Right. So if memory serves, correct me if I'm wrong, but if memory serves, the tax collector had a certain amount of tax he had to collect for the Romans, and everything that he collected above that he kept.
That's my understanding. Yes, I can't confirm that that's 100% true, but that's my understanding as well.
So if you owed 10 denarii and you gathered 20, 10 goes to Rome, 10 goes yourself. Yeah, he's
It's
not a
probably a pretty profitable day.
yeah. Oh, and all he's doing is collecting stuff for somebody else. But anyway, maybe we digress a little bit. This
Yeah.
this
But
this po-
the point is that that the first part of that verse is the brother of simple or humble circumstances. They're the ones that will rise to the high position. And I think we see that throughout the Bible with the different circumstances. We just talked about the disciples, talked about David, things like that. But it's that next part that really struggles. Like the rich man is to glory in his humiliation. Well, what's the humiliation that he's glorying in? He's rich.
but it just doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I mean, in the long run, it just doesn't matter. You can't take it with you. You can pass it on, but you can't take it with you. And
right.
I mean,
And and any status that you had, rich or otherwise, on in our earthly existence doesn't do anything for you once you get to the gates, right? Once you stand in front of God and judgment, I can't bribe him.
yep, it
Do you know how rich I was on earth? Like that's not gonna work.
doesn't matter. You can't pay the guy at the gate a little something to get in.
Yeah. Because like the way the rest of the verse goes into is like all of that's going to fade away, just like grass fades away, the sun scorches it, the wind then carries it off. Like that's exactly what's going to happen to a rich man's riches or to a person of high status, their status. That like it's just going to go away. And I like the last piece of that verse is it says, "So too the rich man in the midst of his pursuits will fade away." And I think that's the key, right? There's
Mm,
nothing wrong with being rich. There's nothing wrong with having a high status. But if that is your only pursuit, that's going to be the problem.
yeah, yeah. I think uh, my idea is what you have, you give.
Mm,
And that, if I have more, I can give more. And I know a few people like that have a lot and they give a lot. And sadly, I know some people who have a lot and aren't about to separate themselves from anything. They ain't given anything, and those are the friends I really kind of worry about if I'm allowed to worry. I think the payoff here is kind of what fades can't be your foundation.
mm. Oh, I like that a lot. Because I mean it is true, right? It's like again, nothing wrong with having high status, being recognized, having, fame, having riches. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But if that's your pursuit and that's your only pursuit, and then you do it for selfish reasons for yourself, yeah, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah,
But if the pursuit is not to have riches, to not be famous or whatever, but to bring others to Christ and to serve Him yourself, then you get to use those riches and that fame and that status in a completely different way. And you kind of mentioned that before, like I could care less about people who are famous, athletes, Hollywood, whatever. But the ones that you just see, they just act and behave different, and they don't shy away from their faith. Like they're not doing it for the fame. They're doing it. They just happen to be using their talent that was given to them for a completely different reason.
right, right. Totally agree. So think about it this way: how do we take this and personalize it? So first of all, we need to learn to detach our identity
Mm,
from the stuff and have our identity grounded in Christ.
yep.
It's not the house, it's not the car, it's not the stuff, it's not the stuff. Uh,
Yep. And, yeah, and I think it has to extend into it's also not my title. or my position or the it's not the role that I play.
That's
Like,
right.
I think so have to go hand in hand. And then I think the next piece to that too is if you have, give. Just learn to be generous.
Yes, practice generosity on a regular basis. I have something somebody doesn't. Perhaps I'm able to help them out, and that's kind of to me that's kind of a big deal. Is helping each other out, not because the government tells us we have to, not because the culture tells me I have to, but I do it because I want to actually help somebody, and I do it to honor Christ with what he's entrusted me. All this stuff is his anyway. He's entrusted
Right.
me with the stuff. Use this stuff to honor him.
Yep. I like that. And I think then there's that one last piece too is then like don't don't treat people differently because of their status or their riches, right? Treat everybody and honor everybody equally.
Right?
What's the Bible say that, you never know when you might be entertaining angels, right? So, um, who knows
Yeah.
what that means? And then, we're also called to, to take care of the orphans and the widows and the sick and the infirmed and those in prison. We're called to take care of those people. Well, those people, from a status perspective, they're the low of the low of the stat on at least on the status ladder. They're the lowest rung.
Yeah, we're told to take care of the widows and orphans. Those
Yep.
in back in the day, those were the lowest of the low. I keep thinking if I were to ever run across a very famous celebrity of any type of celebrity status in a coffee shop or something like that, how would I act to them? And regarding just being in the presence of somebody who says they're famous or who other people say are famous, how would I act? And the more I think about it, the more I pretty much ignore it.
I think for the vast majority, there are a few individuals that I think I would appreciate meeting, but I don't know as I would be like starstruck by
Yeah,
them by any means. But there's a few individuals I think would be I would enjoy having a conversation with. But
sure.
that's a relatively small list. All the rest of them, don't really care. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't even recognize half of them anymore. So
yeah. That's another story,
true.
right?
So how do we wrap this all up? What does it all mean, Bill?
Well, my thought is that there is a sense of equality going on. As you don't treat the poor badly, and you don't treat the rich like there's something special. You treat them all the same because that's how God sees us. That's how God sees me. That's how God sees you. That's how God sees us. So I think the thought is, where do I chase status, and where do I feel shame?
Mm,
And kind of look at it from that point when you read this passage, and then end it up by saying, how can I be more generous moving forward? Just a little more generous
I,
in a few different areas in my life.
and I kind of take kind of two things here. One is, if you're already struggling, you kind of feel like maybe you don't matter. You kind of feel like, I'm really kind of struggling from a financial perspective. I don't have a lot of status at work or, whatever. Like recognize that's who God tends to lift up and to raise up, thinking, again, David and the disciples and things like that. But on the other side, if you are somebody of means, do some a little self-evaluation as to, you know, is my pursuit in raising more means, or is my pursuit to be able to do something with that means for God's glory and for, what we're called to do?
Right. The more you have, the more you can give.
Yep.
I mean, you can look at it that way, but if it's the more you have just for having more, you miss the point. So let's leave it at that.
I like it. That's Bill.
That's Jamie.